There's something strange about stories that sound too personal to be fiction. They crawl under your skin, whispering that maybe, just maybe, they happened somewhere, to someone who's still alive enough to remember. What you're about to hear was sent to me by a man who asked that I change his name and the town where this took place. He said he needed to tell someone before he lost his mind completely, before the knocking started again. If you've ever lost someone you loved, this story might hurt a little. If you've ever heard their voice calling to you long after they were gone, then it might hurt a lot more. This is his confession, and he calls it The Angel Beside My Son. I never thought grief could rot a house from the inside out, but after my son Robbie lost his girlfriend and his old cat died, within the same month, it was as if the air in our home turned thick and stale, like something dying quietly in the walls. He'd had that cat for 15 years. It used to curl against his chest at night like a living heartbeat. When it died, he didn't talk for 2 days. The next week, I caught him staring at the empty spot on his bed, whispering something under his breath. I knew he'd been using pills again, opioids. He promised he'd stopped, but any parent who's lived through addiction knows what a lie sounds like. His voice always carried that soft edge of denial, polite, tired, hollow. Then, out of nowhere, things changed. He began smiling again. He cleaned his room, started eating breakfast, with us even cracked jokes like he used to. He said things like, "I finally see everything clearly, Dad." At first, I thought it meant hope. I told him that suffering makes stronger men, that no great man had ever lived without great suffering to shape him. He nodded with that small, quiet smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. That night, I went to bed feeling lighter than I had in months. For the first time, I thought maybe our boy had finally crossed the mountain. And then, sometime past midnight, I heard the gunshot. There's a kind of silence that doesn't belong in this world, the silence right after something irreversibly awful happens. My wife's scream cut through it like broken glass. It wasn't a sound a human throat should make. It was raw, endless. I ran toward it, feet numb, chest frozen. The hallway stretched like a dream too long, too dark. I remember knocking over a vase and watching it shatter in slow motion, as if the air itself had thickened. When I reached Robbie's room, the door was half open. I don't know what I expected. Maybe for him to still be breathing, or for all of it to be a nightmare. But nightmares aren't that generous. He sat slumped in the recliner by his bed. The shotgun lay between his feet like a discarded toy. There was no face left, only ruin. A single glassy eye stared forward, unseeing. I remember falling to my knees. I think I was screaming, but it sounded like someone else's voice, a stranger inside my own throat. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in a hospital bed with wires running across my chest and a doctor explaining that I'd suffered a mild heart attack. He called it survivor's trauma. I just called it punishment. They told me my wife was physically unharmed. That wasn't true. Something in her had broken clean in half. When I saw her again, she was lying in a narrow hospital bed in the psychiatric ward. Eyes wide open, arms raised toward the ceiling, as if reaching for something I couldn't see. She didn't move when I entered, didn't blink, just breathed shallow, rhythmic, mechanical. A doctor explained the phrase, waxy flexibility, to me how her body would stay in any position you placed it. He lifted her arm and let it hang at an angle, and it just stayed there. He said, she was catatonic, that sometimes when the mind can't process grief, it retreats into silence. I nodded, pretending to understand, though all I wanted was for her to blink just once so I'd know she was still inside. Then the doctor asked if she'd ever shown signs of hallucinations before. I told him no. She was honest to a fault, the kind of woman who wouldn't even call in sick unless she was truly ill. But then I remembered something. A few nights before Robbie's death, she'd woken me up trembling. She said she saw someone standing outside Robbie's window, a tall figure with pale eyes watching him sleep. I told her it was just a trick of the light, that no one could reach the third floor without a ladder. She'd whispered, "He doesn't need a ladder. He's already inside." The doctor wrote something down and changed the subject. When I left the hospital that night, the parking lot was empty, except for my car and the cold humming lights. I sat there for a long time, staring at my reflection in the windshield. I thought about how Robbie's window had always faced the woods, dark, endless whispering with winter wind. And for the first time, I wondered if my wife had truly seen something. A few weeks passed. I tried to fill the house with sound again, the TV, the radio, even the ticking clock in the kitchen. Anything to drown out the silence that kept pressing against me. But every night, I'd find myself standing in the hallway outside Robbie's door, staring at it, hand shaking on the knob. One night I finally opened it. The room had been cleaned by professionals. They'd replaced the floorboards, painted the walls. But no amount of bleach could erase what had happened there. The air still carried a faint metallic scent, like something buried and half forgotten. That's when I saw it. A smudge on the window. 2 long pale handprints pressed against the glass from the outside. I froze. It had snowed that day, and I remembered how high that window sat above the ground, nearly 30 feet. There was no way anyone could have reached it. I stepped closer, and for a second, I thought I saw a face reflected in the glass. My own distorted standing next to something skeletal and tall behind me. I turned around, heart hammering. The room was empty. Later, when I told Alexis about it during one of my visits, she didn't move or look at me, but her lips twitched, forming words too faint to hear. I leaned closer. "Don't clean the glass," she whispered. "He needs to see." I found it a week later, while sorting through Robbie's things, a thin black notebook shoved between some old sketchbooks on his shelf. The first page was a drawing of him sleeping, and beside him, a figure with rotting skin and bright, lidless eyes lay curled like a lover. Underneath, he'd written in his small, sharp handwriting, "The angel of death sleeps beside me at night." I felt a chill run through me. As I flipped through the pages, I found sketches of monstrous forms, wings like torn leather faces, turned backward mouths, full of teeth. Between them, fragments of writing. "She comes in dreams first. She whispers things about the other side. She says pain is just the body letting go." On one page, he'd copied an old poem, the same one he used to recite when he was younger. "The angel of death sleeps beside me at night. Her black hair covers my eyes like a shroud. She smiles when I cry, because she knows I am already hers." The last entry stopped mid-sentence. "If you hear me calling in the dark, don't answer." I closed the diary and sat there for a long time, my chest tightening. Outside, the wind scraped against the siding, and for a moment, I swore I heard something faint, a slow, dragging sound coming from the porch. It happened 3 nights later. I woke to a noise that didn't belong, a heavy, deliberate pounding at the front door. Each knock sounded like it came from something too large to be human. The clock read 3:33 a.m. My first thought was that someone had broken in. I grabbed the rifle I kept in the closet and crept toward the stairs. Then I heard it. "Dad?" It was Robbie's voice, not just similar, identical. The tone, the inflection, the way he used to drag the word out when he was scared. "Dad, please, it's cold." My whole body went numb. I wanted to believe it. God, I wanted to. But I'd seen his body. I'd buried him. The knocking came again, harder. Wood splintered. "Let me in, Dad," the voice pleaded. "It's so dark." I backed away, heart hammering. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A call from an unknown number. I answered without thinking. A woman's voice whispered on the line, "Don't open the door." It was my wife's voice. Before I could speak, the call went dead. And then I heard it again. Robbie's voice now inside the house. The footsteps were slow, dragging impossibly heavy. I raised the rifle, breathing hard. The door to the bedroom shook once, twice, and then exploded inward. What stood there wasn't my son. It wore his shape, but the eyes were white, milky, and its mouth stretched too wide, teeth blackened, gums leaking something dark. Its tongue split like a snake's. "Dad," it hissed, "you said suffering makes strong men." I fired until the gun clicked empty. The thing shrieked, not in pain, but in laughter. I reloaded, shaking so badly I dropped the magazine. When I looked back up, it was gone. I heard movement behind me, a scraping sound under the bed. Then claws, cold and wet, clamped around my ankle. I kicked door free and bolted for the hallway. My vision tunneled. Every heartbeat felt like it might stop my damaged heart for good. Down the stairs, through the front door, splinters, snow blood. I didn't look back. I drove until dawn, until the house was just a thought behind me. When I finally pulled over at a gas station, I caught my reflection in the window. My right ear was gone, bitten clean off. For a long time, I just sat there, staring at the red stains on my collar, waiting for someone to tell me this was all a dream. No one ever did. The police went to the house. They said the front door was shattered, the walls riddled with bullet holes, but no blood. None of mine. None of anything else. They found 12 shell casings on the bedroom floor and 2 sets of footprints in the snow outside. One large, one small. They said maybe I'd imagined it. Trauma grief medication, easy words to explain away the impossible. I nodded, signed the papers and left. Now I stay in a small apartment outside Portland. Some nights, when the world goes still and the clock hits that same cursed minute, I hear it, the faint rhythmic knock against the window. Sometimes a voice follows. "Dad, open up. It's so cold." I never look. I just sit there in the dark, listening, waiting for the silence to come back. Because silence, I've learned, is the only mercy the dead still offer. If you're still here listening in the dark, thank you. Some stories aren't meant to comfort us. They're meant to remind us that grief has a voice, and sometimes it speaks back. The man who sent me this recording never contacted me again. His number stopped working. The apartment he mentioned is now empty, but the neighbors say that on quiet winter nights, they still hear knocking 3 times somewhere near 3:33 a.m. If that ever happens to you, don't open the door. And whatever you do, don't answer the voice that sounds like someone you miss. Good night, and sleep carefully.